Well, we have calls and comments coming in here. We're talking about tipping. I mean, have Canadians reached a tipping point with tipping? The results of a new survey found 1/3 of respondents are tipping less than they did a year ago. That survey from H&R Block suggests most Canadians feel tipping culture is out of hand and most gratuity options are too high. The online survey of 1,790 respondents was conducted nationwide February 12th to the 13th. Online polls do not include a margin of error because they are not considered random samples. So today here on the show, we're asking you, what do you think of tipping culture? Do you tip? If you do tip, how much do you tip? And who do you give your tip to? What's the most surprising service that you've been prompted to tip for? Give us a call. Join the conversation. A lot of people already wanting to join the conversation here. 204-780-0893. 204-780-0893. Call us toll free if you're out of town. 1-800-268-5483. And you can also text us at 204-588-7355. We're going to get to our callers and our comments here in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce our guest. Corey Mintz is a food reporter and author of the book, The Next Supper, The End of Restaurants as We Knew Them and What Comes After. And Corey joins me now in studio. Well, hello. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Hello, Marjorie. Let's get into
it. This is a talker. Okay, so the survey, the H&R Block here survey found that 94% of Canadians say they're annoyed by the tip prompts on card payment machines. What do you think of that results and what Canadians think of tipping?
Well, you can't doubt it because it comes from H&R Block, our nation's news leader. Mm-hmm. But when I read through that study, I noticed, while I empathize, I'm fully frustrated by the constant tip creep. And when I said tip creep, I mean not just where we're asked to tip, but how much we are prompted to tip, both of which have just ballooned in recent years, being asked to tip at the barbershop or the car repair shop, and seeing that average range of tip prompts jump from 8, 10 to 15% to 10, 50 to 1,000%. It's annoying, but at the same time, when you look at the respondents, the average tip they suggested was 9%. Mm-hmm. And while they do have a large sample size, that suggests a misalignment between the public's perception of how much they're expected to tip and what we, and when I see the we, that's a generalization, what we have been told is a reasonable sized tip, at least in the hospitality setting.
What would you say it is in the hospitality? So I've been told, if it's really great service, 20%. Mm-hmm. Double digits. In the survey, I see that people say about 13% for restaurant servers. But as someone who's worked in the industry, and you've written about this a lot, I mean, what is a good kind of, percentage here when it comes to
Of course,
tipping?
People, depending on who you're talking to, they'll give you a different answer. When I was growing up in 19... I was always told you got 15% and you go a little higher if it's good. Later, when I found myself working in restaurants, I was told, no, 20% is the standard and you go above if not. And then since then, I've come to learn that our perception of tips, which is commonly believed to be a way to express our gratitude for a job well done, is itself a real fraudulent, fractured mirror version of the reality, which is that tips are a way to artificially suppress menu prices to keep the appearance of affordability for customers while hiding the cost of labor, which is increasing radically in recent years through what's seen as a voluntary gesture, even though really you're saying 20% of the cost of my goods, I don't want my customers to absorb the sticker shock of that. So I'll just keep my prices at this point and expect them to give me that other 1/5 of the revenue that I need.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, the comments, let's get to them because they're coming in fast and furious. Bob joins us now on line 1. Hi, Bob. Welcome to the show.
Oh, good afternoon.
What's your comment or your question?
Well, first of all, I always use the no tip option if I'm using a gadget. And then if I am going to tip, I tip with cash, and I round it up to paper. Never put loonies on the desk or anything like that. But also when I tip, I tip about 15%, because I assume that the server is getting paid, and But then I do make the 15%. I do the calculation in my head, and I make sure it's before the tax has been added on. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that in Quebec, they have recently legislated that the pre-tax cost is the only value that the gadget can be used. That the value of the pre-tax cost is the only value that can be used on a gadget with the 10, 15, 20, 50%.
Okay.
So there you are.
Well, thank you so much for your comment. But before I let you go, Bob, how do you know when you're not going to leave a tip for someone, and how do you know who you are going to tip?
If I'm getting rubbish service, then, the server is getting paid anyway by the owner. And so I'm very happy to just say no tip.
Very interesting. Bob, thank you so much for your comment. Thank you for calling into the show. Corey, what do you think there of Bob's comments? I didn't know that about Quebec.
Yeah, thank you, Bob, first of all, for changing his good morning to good afternoon. I really appreciate that. We're half past noon here, but also for highlighting something really important. People talk about this sometimes as if it's a conspiracy theory. Did you know, actually, the tip is calculated based on the gross total that includes, I'm paying a tip on the tax. That's true. People do this all the time. It is a scam. They shouldn't get away with it. And I thank you, Bob, for highlighting, and thank you, Quebec, for modernizing a really ridiculous practice. But as long as we're giving accolades to Quebec, let's also throw some jeers to Manitoba. This is one of, if not the only province that has really no legislation for how tips can be divided or shared. In Ontario and most other places, if I employ you and the tips come in, it's illegal for me to take a portion of that unless I also work front of house myself. Manitoba, I could take 100% of that.
Very interesting, because a lot of people have that question too when it comes to tips. If I'm giving a tip to a server,
where does it go?
Exactly.
Where does it go?
Where does it go?
And the reality is, people who tell you they know, unless they are the manager or the tip captain for a restaurant for legal purposes, they don't know. The presumption that we know where it's going, totally false. Every restaurant is kind of like its own little fiefdom. They often have their own rules for how they're doing, and there's no way you, the customer, could know that unless, as is the rare case some places in the States, where it's right on the menu. We charge a service charge. It is exactly this percentage, and here's exactly who it goes to, and here's the benefits, including dental, maybe, of what it pays for. We
have Zach, who now joins us on the line. Hi, Zach.
Hi there.
Hi,
Thanks
what's your
for
comment?
Taking my call.
Thank you for joining us. What's your comment?
Couple things. Well, I guess first off, I don't tip in the hospitality department. I only tip one person, and that is my massage therapist. And the reason is because I can't massage my own backside. So I usually would tip for jobs that I can't do. And I think Dwight Schrute says that in The Office very well. He tips his neurologist, not the person who delivers them pizza, because he can't do his own surgeries or whatnot. And then also, I'm an electrician. My wife is a nurse, and, we deal with dirty areas. She saves lives. She's amazing. She's a superhero. Nobody tips her. Nobody tips me. I've had friends growing up that started in the service industry, and we would have this conversation, and we're like 16, 17. And my friends are telling me I should tip because they need it for their wage. And my response is, I'm not here to subsidize your job. Don't work there. And I know that's very easy maybe for myself to say, and I've also had my neighbor, she told me, we got in a kind of a big conversation about it because she was a single mother and she was a waitress. And she's like, that was the only way I survived. And I was like, so I get that, but majority, I don't really tip anyone except for my massage therapist. And I will add in very shortly, I will tip 10% if I take my wife out for her birthday, because I know she likes tipping. So that's a little gift to her that I am tipping while we're on our date. But if it's not her birthday and we're going out, no tip.
Okay. Thank you so much there for your comments, Zach.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
Thank you. Again, if you want to give us a comment, 204-780-0893 or text us 204-588-7355. Let's quickly get to Robin here because we have a lot of comments to get through, Corey. I'm going to get to Robin here. Hi, Robin.
Hello. How
Hi.
are you?
Hi. Good. How are you? What's your comment?
Well, basically what I wanted to say was when I tip in person, I get a better read as to what the service is.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually give about 15%, if not more. But when I do something like Uber Eats or Skip the Dishes, that kind of thing, you have to tip before the service is even coming to you. So if I'm in a hurry and I want the food to kind of come a bit quicker, sometimes I feel that, if I would give it like too low of a tip, then maybe the food wouldn't come as quickly, or maybe they might switch it to another driver, that kind of thing. So I feel a lot of pressure there when I do something like Uber Eats. Like the lowest amount that they suggest is 15%, which is quite high for just a delivery, So anyway.
And those, sorry to
Oh,
jump
no, go
in
ahead,
there,
Corey,
but those, sorry, you're on with Marge in the Mints here. Those aren't imagined pressures. One of those companies, and I'm going to say one of them because I don't remember if it was DoorDash or Uber Eats, they incentivized that last year where they started, they realized, of course, people are trying to game the system by pre-tipping, and they know their drivers are making choices about which offers to accept based on the pre-tip total for their payment, and they were prompting diners to say, hey, consider your tip. It may affect, I'm paraphrasing here, how quickly your food comes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to ask you about that too. Pressure to tip. Do you notice that there's more pressure to tip these days? Just because Robin brought up a good point.
Sure.
Even before the service happens or before you get the product, you pay for something and you do get that prompt on that machine. Or same thing if you do order something, say through like a food delivery service, before you get the product, before you know how long it's going to take to get your food, you're already asked to leave that tip.
Well, I mean, there's pressure, but there's two different situations we're highlighting here. One is what Rob mentioned. That's not a tip. That's a bribe. That's someone saying, hey, maybe you'd get your food if you gave you a little money. That's not anyone's definition of what a tip is. The pressure that I see happening on the other end is when you're in the physical space with people, you are handed the terminal and it has a tip prompt where you never expected one. And now you are face to face with an employee, and you've got people behind you who both you may feel are judging you or simply impatient while you need to make a decision fast. And you don't really have time to say, hold on, let me quickly read the 10,000-word chapter in Corey's book about the history of tips and slavery and the economic levers that are pulled by making wages lower for tipped workers. Let me do all this research before I decide. And what you're going to do more often than not is feel like, well, I feel guilty and pressure, so I'm going to tip something, as opposed to saying, wait, I'm engaging with a business the same way I have for 20 years, and suddenly they're telling me, at the final line, when people are watching me from all sides, I need to give a little something extra.
We're speaking here with Corey Mintz, food reporter and author of the book, The Next Supper, The End of Restaurants as We Knew Them and What Comes After. We have about 7 more minutes to take some comments here, 204-780-0893 or text us 204-588-7355. We're talking about tipping here. We have quite a few text messages, so I'm going to get through them pretty quickly. Dave, I tip 20% at restaurants if I have decent service and food because I know they work hard for minimal pay during the stage of extreme wealth inequity. What do you think of Dave's comment there? 20%, and people talking about we're talking about the cost here. Some people are saying wages are low, and it's up to the person, the person who's receiving the service, to kind of pay the difference in the wage. Is that something that's
reality? He's being a pragmatist. That is what it is. If I say my product, my food is $10. And I expect you to tip ballpark 20%, I am expecting $12 in revenue, which I can then use to pay my staff, whether that's a living wage, one would hope. But staff are absolutely depending on that tip for a living wage. So it's not a voluntary gift. And that is the unfortunate reality of this.
Okay. Liz joins us now on the line. Hi, Liz.
Oh, hello.
Hi, what's your comment?
I absolutely abhor tipping. They don't do it in Australia, and I hope the practice happens here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why. It is not my job to subsidize the employee's salary when the employer should be paying his employees a livable wage. It's not my job to help out the employer, the owner of the restaurant.
You're 100% right. And here's what's a shame. Those employers have decided, they know it's not, why should it be their customers' jobs to pay their employees' salary? You use the right word, subsidy. The problem is they've also decided if I charge $12 for that product instead of $10, they're afraid that sticker shock will cause them to lose customers and lose sales.
Thank you so much for your comment there, Liz. Tim texted, I have been a tipper and gauge the amount based on the level of service and ask it be shared with those in the kitchen. Having experience in European culture where tipping is unexpected and actually frowned upon, I'm not tipping as often. My current take is that employers need to pivot and move toward paying their workers better and removing their tip expectations. And I want to ask you about this, Corey. Is tipping a very North American thing? Because as we heard from Liz, in Australia they don't do it. And I just read Tim's comment here about the idea of tipping in Europe. Is tipping very North American?
Very. I don't have my my list handy for the specific countries that don't tip, but certainly Australia, they pay a high living wage there. Japan, there's no tipping. I know Chile's, there's no tipping. Large parts of Asia, there's no tipping culture. Europe is a little bit of a gray area because it's very idiosyncratic. When you talk to individual countries, they'll say, we tip, but it's always like basically you leave the change and it's very minor. It's sort of you're leaving the remainder of a pound or a euro as opposed to what they would consider the exorbitant rate that we were always expected to tip. It's very North American, although we got the idea from Europe, from Jefferson post Civil War, being inspired by this custom in Europe of aristocrats tipping people for service, and they realized after the Civil War, maybe this is a way to employ formerly enslaved people without having to pay them. What if we could expect our customers to give them a gift? And it was predominant in the hospitality and the railroad industries. And eventually they said, let's do this all over the place.
Yeah, and I didn't know this, that there's an actual history behind tipping, and you looked into it as you just explained it right there, because a lot of people are wondering, where did it come from? Where did it start from? How did it become ingrained in our culture? But there's a history here behind tipping.
Yeah, and you follow that sort of origin point of how can we not pay people we used to legally be allowed to not pay at all, and that codified into law both in Canada and the United States. We created laws that say if a certain class of employee is tipped, we can pay them less than minimum wage. And those laws have gotten more and more complicated and more ingrained in our lifestyle to the point where, as one of your callers suggests, they're just businesses, large chunks of businesses that can't operate on a legitimate model of paying what their product and services need to haul in revenue, because they know that customers are used to paying a lower price with the imagined perception that they're giving a little something extra voluntarily.
We're speaking with Corey Mintz, a food reporter and author of the book, The Next Supper, The End of Restaurants as We Knew Them and What Comes After. We're talking about tipping. This is because it appears, according to a survey done by H&R Block, Canadians are tapped out when it comes to tipping. We have about a couple minutes here left, so I'm going to get to Sarah's comment. I tip whatever I can do. Someone performing a task, even a lawyer, should be able to receive a tip. There's a class problem with what denotes tipping. If you're treated well, tip more, PS, and use cash as much as possible. Okay, so she's even suggesting a lawyer get it.
Love that. And I don't know how serious Zach was as he quoted the villain of The Office. Most people perceive that character to be the villain of that television show, and he was inspired by him. But a lot of people maintain some of those beliefs. It usually is the breaking point for people realizing, oh, right, wait, I don't tip my electrician. I don't tip my dentist. They charge me what they believe their services are worth, and I choose to pay that or to go somewhere else.
We have about a minute left here in our call-in segment, Corey. So I want to ask you, how do we move forward then? I mean, what is it going to take to help Canadians change their mindset around tipping? Because, we've had discussions about tip creep, people saying we're paying too much in tipping, people saying we should do away with tipping. So how do we move forward then to change Canadians' mindsets around tipping?
We had an inflection point, the pandemic. We had a moment to re-examine our hospitality culture and change some things, and we collectively decided not to. There are a number of restaurants that have done away with tipping, gone for a service-included model, raised prices, and some of them that's working great for, and they wouldn't dream of going back, and some of them didn't work out. Their customers didn't like it, they wouldn't go back. In Canada, we aren't able to make use of what they often do in the States, which is the service fee model, just saying it's still the same price, there's a 20% service charge period, it all goes to staff. I would like to see that come to Canada, but until there's some legislation that changes things, there won't be any change in this very circular discussion of why do we still tip?
Yeah, because we do come back to it every once in a while, don't we? We have that discussion about tipping.
We do every 5 years, and I'm here for every moment of it. I love talking about tips.
Well, I really do appreciate you for joining us on the show today and joining us for what was a very thrilling and lively conversation around tipping. Thank you so much, Corey.
Thank you for having me.
Corey Mintz is a food reporter and author of the book The Next Supper, The End of Restaurants as We Knew Them and What Comes After.